The massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers slid open with a soft hiss, and Ambassador Jake Morrison stepped inside. His black diplomatic uniform looked plain next to the colorful robes and ceremonial armor worn by the alien representatives. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, with floating platforms arranged in a perfect circle around a central holographic display. Each platform held the delegation from one of the 7 major galactic species. Jake walked calmly to the human platform, which sat noticeably lower than the others. This had been done on purpose, though the aliens always claimed it was for better acoustics. Behind him, Captain Lisa Hughes followed in her dress uniform, her hand resting casually on her sidearm. She took her position at the observation deck, where she could watch both the proceedings and the exits. The Zeltharian Prime Minister, a tall creature with silver skin and 4 arms, spoke first. His voice carried the usual tone of bored authority that Jake had grown to hate over 30 years of these meetings. The Prime Minister was discussing new mining rights in the Outer Rim, specifically the asteroid fields that human surveyors had discovered and mapped just 2 years ago. Jake listened as the Prime Minister explained how these valuable resources would be divided among the council members. Humans would receive a small percentage, just enough to cover their surveying costs. The rest would go to the more established galactic powers, who had the proper infrastructure to handle such large operations. The words stung because Jake knew the truth. Human mining technology was decades ahead of anything the aliens possessed. Human engineers had designed the extraction equipment currently being used on 17 different worlds. When the Corvin Trade Federation had faced a collapse in their primary mining operation 3 years ago, it was human expertise that saved their economy. Next came the Corvin representative, a short creature covered in thick fur, whose species controlled most of the galaxy's trade routes. He stood on his elevated platform and announced new shipping regulations. Human vessels would now be required to undergo additional inspections at every major port. The reason given was security, but everyone in the chamber knew it was about control. Jake felt his jaw tighten. Human ships had the best safety records in the galaxy. Human navigation systems were so reliable that most alien vessels secretly used human-designed guidance computers. Yet here they sat, being lectured about safety by creatures whose own ships regularly suffered system failures. The ethereal collective's ambassador floated above her platform, her translucent form shimmering in the chamber's lights. She spoke in musical tones about territorial boundaries near human colony worlds. 3 human settlements would need to be relocated because they interfered with ethereal meditation spaces. The fact that these colonies had been established decades before the ethereals even knew about the region seemed irrelevant. Jake had helped negotiate the original settlement agreements for those colonies. The paperwork was solid, the claims were legal, and the colonists had invested their entire lives in building those communities. Now they would lose everything because an alien species wanted quiet space for their religious practices. From the observation deck, Lisa Hughes watched the proceedings with growing anger. She had served on the front lines of the pirate wars, where human forces had saved countless alien worlds from raiders and criminals. Just last year, her own ship had rescued a Nexari passenger vessel from hijackers. The grateful Nexari captain had promised that his people would never forget human courage and sacrifice. Yet here sat the Nexari delegate, nodding approvingly as each new restriction was placed on human activities. The same species that owed their lives to human intervention was now voting to limit human expansion and trade rights. The discussion continued for hours, with each alien species adding their own demands and restrictions. Humans would pay higher docking fees at alien ports. Human research teams would need alien supervision when studying phenomena in non-human space. Human diplomatic missions would be limited to lower-level personnel. as the aliens felt more comfortable dealing with their own kind on important matters. Morrison had sat through hundreds of these meetings over his career. He had watched. As human contributions were minimized, human achievements were credited to others, and human concerns were dismissed as unimportant. Every year, the restrictions grew tighter and the insults grew more obvious. The breaking point came when the OMV, Ethereal Collective's ambassador, addressed the human delegation directly. Her voice carried that same musical quality, but her words cut like a blade. She suggested that humans should feel grateful for their inclusion in galactic society. After all, she explained, humanity was still a young species with much to learn. From their more experienced neighbors, the ambassador continued, noting that human emotional instability made them unsuitable for leadership roles in galactic affairs. She recommended that humans focus on support roles, where their enthusiasm could be properly channeled under alien guidance. The chamber filled with what passed for laughter among the various species. Jake Morrison stood up slowly. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to the human platform. For 30 years, he had endured insults, condescension, and outright discrimination. He had watched as human innovations were stolen, human heroes were forgotten, and human sacrifices were dismissed as expected obligations. Lisa Hughes straightened in the observation deck, her hand moving instinctively toward her weapon. She could see the tension in Jake's shoulders and knew that something important was about to happen. Jake's voice was calm and clear when he finally spoke. He thanked the Council for their time and explained that humanity had reached a decision. Effective. Immediately, humans were withdrawing from all galactic treaties, trade agreements, and cooperative ventures. The withdrawal would be complete and permanent. The alien representatives looked confused at first. The Corvin delegate actually chuckled, assuming this was some kind of negotiating tactic. The Zeltharian Prime Minister began explaining why human withdrawal would be impossible, given their dependence on galactic trade networks. Jake Morrison gathered his papers and stood to leave. He informed the Council that all human personnel would be recalled from alien territories within 6 months. All joint operations would be terminated. All technology sharing agreements would be canceled. Humanity was done with galactic society. As Jake walked toward the exit, the alien representatives called out questions and demands. They wanted to know who had authorized this decision. They insisted that humans had obligations that could not simply be abandoned. The Nexari delegate actually ordered Jake to return to his platform and continue the discussion. Jake paused at the chamber doors and turned back one final time. He looked at each alien representative and spoke with quiet dignity. He told them that humanity had learned much from their galactic neighbors, particularly about the importance of self-respect and independence. Then he walked out with Lisa Hughes close behind. The chamber erupted in angry voices as the doors closed. The aliens were already discussing how to punish humanity for this outrageous behavior. They talked about trade sanctions and diplomatic isolation. Some suggested military action to force human compliance with existing agreements. None of them considered that maybe, just maybe, they had made a terrible mistake. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Jake Morrison walked out of the Galactic Council chambers, and the galaxy was celebrating. News broadcasts across dozens of worlds praised the end of human involvement in galactic affairs. The Corvin Trade Federation immediately claimed 3 major trading posts that humans had operated in the neutral zone. Within weeks, Corvin ships were docking at stations that human engineers had built and human technicians had maintained for over 20 years. The Zeltharian Empire moved even faster. Their mining fleets descended on asteroid fields that human surveyors had discovered and mapped. The same asteroids that the Zeltharians had declared too dangerous to mine just months earlier were now being stripped of their valuable metals. Zeltharian officials proudly announced that they had increased their mineral output by 40% simply by taking over human operations. On the alien worlds, the mood was cheerful and optimistic. The Nexari celebrated their independence from human influence with festivals that lasted for weeks. The ethereal collective issued statements about the improved spiritual harmony now that human emotional chaos was no longer disrupting their meditation. Spaces, even the smaller species, joined in the celebration, happy to divide up the resources and territories the humans were. Abandoning Dot what the aliens did not see was the careful precision with which humans were withdrawing from their shared galaxy. On a military base orbiting the Corvin homeworld, Colonel Danny Brooks supervised the loading of the last human transport ship. His teams had spent months carefully removing every piece of human equipment, every technical manual, and every spare part from the Joint Defense Facility. The Corvin base commander watched. The humans packed their belongings with obvious relief. He joked with his officers about finally being free from human interference in their military operations. The Corvins had never liked following human tactical advice anyway, even though human strategies had won every major battle against the pirate fleets. Colonel Brooks said nothing as he sealed the final cargo container. Inside were the control codes for the base's defensive systems, the maintenance schedules for the fusion reactors, and the technical specifications for the quantum communication array. The Corvins assumed they could simply continue using the equipment after the humans left. They had no idea that most of their advanced technology required constant human oversight to function properly. On the industrial world of Kepler Station, engineer Katie Walsh led her team through the systematic shutdown of the power generation facility they had built 15 years earlier. The station provided energy to 12 different alien colonies, and the aliens had always assumed it was mostly automated. They never realized that Katie's team made daily adjustments to prevent system overloads, replaced critical components on a rotating schedule, and fine-tuned the fusion reactions to maintain optimal efficiency. Katie's replacement was a Zeltharian engineer who had studied human technology from textbooks. He seemed confident that he could handle the simple task of keeping the reactors running. Katie handed him the basic operational manual and wished him luck. She did not mention the 17 emergency procedures that were not written down anywhere, or the 3 design flaws that required specific workarounds every few weeks. Back on Earth, President Nick Carter addressed the planet in a calm and measured speech. He explained that Operation Homecoming was proceeding smoothly, with human citizens returning from alien territories in an orderly fashion. The president spoke about humanity's bright future as an independent species, free to pursue their own destiny among the stars. Dr. Samuel Wright sat in his library, watching the president's speech while reviewing reports from returning human scientists. Every human researcher who had worked on alien worlds was bringing back detailed records of their projects. Dr. Wright was particularly interested in the biological research that humans had conducted in partnership with alien governments. Most of that research involved solving problems that the aliens could not handle on their own. The ethereal collective, for example, had been facing a plague that was killing their food crops. Human botanists had spent 3 years developing a solution, creating specialized bacteria that would protect ethereal plants from the disease. The treatment required monthly applications of a compound that only human laboratories knew how to produce. Dr. Wright noted that the ethereals had about 6 months of treatment left in storage. Professor Helen Reeves monitored galactic communications from her office at Cambridge University. She had been listening to alien government broadcasts for weeks, looking for signs of trouble. So far, everything seemed normal. The aliens were confident and happy, focused on their new independence from human influence. But Helen noticed some interesting details in the technical reports. 3 separate alien worlds had experienced minor power fluctuations in the past month. A Corvin mining operation had suffered equipment failures that reduced their output by 15%. The Nexari Deep Space Monitoring Network had reported some unusual readings. Though their technicians were unable to determine the cause, Dr. Amanda Foster worked with a team of specialists to catalog everything that humanity was leaving behind. They documented every piece of technology that humans had built for alien governments, every system that required human maintenance, and every process that depended on human expertise. The list was much longer than even Amanda had expected. Physicist Bobby Chun focused on the energy systems that humans had designed for alien worlds. Most aliens used simple fusion reactors that had been upgraded with human improvements over the years. The upgrades were so seamlessly integrated that the aliens probably did not even remember which parts were originally human technology. Systems. Analyst Grace Martinez studied the computer networks that connected alien civilizations. Humans had designed most of the quantum communication systems that allowed instant communication across the galaxy. They had also built the navigation computers that guided alien ships through hyperspace. Grace realized that the aliens were completely dependent on human technology for their basic infrastructure, but they had never been told about that dependence. The first real sign of trouble came from the Zelfarian mining world of Titan 7. The atmospheric processors that kept the planet habitable had been installed by human engineers 20 years earlier. The system was designed to run automatically, but it required regular maintenance that only humans knew how to perform. Colonel Brooks received a report that the atmospheric processors were showing minor irregularities. The Zelfarian technicians had noticed the problems, but assumed they were normal fluctuations. They did not realize that the irregularities were early warning signs of a complete system failure that would occur within months. Similar reports were coming in from other alien worlds. Equipment was breaking down, systems were showing stress, and alien technicians were unable to solve problems that human engineers had prevented for decades. The aliens were not panicking yet because the failures seemed small and manageable, but humans like Dr. Foster knew better. They understood that complex systems fail gradually at first, then all at once. The minor problems happening now were just the beginning of a cascade failure that would eventually bring down the entire galactic infrastructure. Carter ended his speech by announcing that humanity was looking forward to a new era of independence and self-determination. He did not mention the detailed reports sitting on his desk, reports that predicted exactly when and how alien civilization would begin to collapse. 1 year after humanity left the galactic community, the first major disaster struck the Corvan homeworld. The atmospheric processors that had maintained breathable air for millions of Corvans began shutting down without warning. Panic spread through the underground cities as oxygen levels dropped and toxic gases started seeping through the ventilation systems. The Corvan government immediately called in their best engineers to fix the problem. These technicians had studied human atmospheric technology for years and believed they understood how the systems worked. They opened the main control panels and found a maze of circuits and processors that seemed far more complex than their textbooks had suggested. Commander Steve Parker watched the Corvan crisis unfold from a hidden human observation post on the edge of their solar system. His small team had been monitoring alien communications for months, gathering intelligence on how the various species were handling their independence from humanity. Steve sent daily reports back to Earth, and today's report was particularly grim. The Corvan engineers had attempted to restart the atmospheric processors by following standard procedures from their technical manuals. Instead of fixing the problem, their efforts had triggered a cascade failure that knocked out 3 more processing stations. The toxic atmosphere was now spreading to residential areas, and evacuation orders were being issued for the planet's largest cities. Steve knew exactly what had gone wrong. The atmospheric processors required a specific startup sequence that had never been written down in any manual. Human engineers had always handled the process manually, using techniques they had learned through years of experience. The Corvins were trying to fix equipment they had never really understood. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, the Nexari were discovering their own technological problems. The deep space sensor network that protected their territory from asteroid impacts had been operating perfectly for 30 years. The system could detect dangerous objects weeks in advance and calculate precise trajectories for defensive action. But now the sensors were producing strange readings that made no sense to Nexari technicians. Ships were getting lost in hyperspace because the navigation data seemed corrupted. 3 Nexari freighters had already missed their destinations by millions of miles, running out of fuel in empty space before rescue ships could reach them. Ambassador Morrison, now working as Earth's intelligence coordinator, reviewed the reports coming in from observation teams throughout the galaxy. The Nexari sensor network was failing because it required constant calibration that only human technicians knew how to perform. The sensors themselves were working fine, but the interpretation software had been gradually drifting out of alignment for months. The situation became critical when a large asteroid went undetected and struck a Nexari mining facility. The impact killed 300 workers and destroyed equipment worth billions of credits. Nexari officials blamed the disaster on equipment failure, not realizing that their human partners had been preventing similar accidents for decades. The worst crisis was developing on the Ethereal Collective's capital world, where winter temperatures were dropping far below normal levels. The climate control system that had maintained perfect weather for a century was malfunctioning in ways that ethereal technicians could not understand or fix. Captain Hughes, now working in Earth's Strategic Planning Division, studied reports from ethereal territory with growing concern. The climate control system was not just broken, it was actively making the weather worse. Ethereal engineers had tried to fix the temperature fluctuations by adjusting the atmospheric processors, but their changes had triggered an uncontrolled cooling cycle. Within days, the ethereal capital was experiencing the worst winter in recorded history. Temperatures dropped so quickly that buildings began cracking from thermal stress. The ethereal population, evolved for warm climates, was completely unprepared for such extreme cold. Emergency shelters were overwhelmed as thousands of ethereals sought refuge from the deadly weather. Colonel Brooks received urgent intelligence reports about the ethereal crisis from human agents still operating in alien territory. The climate control failure was killing ethereals by the hundreds each day. Their government had declared a planetary emergency and was desperately trying to repair systems they had never truly understood. The colonel knew that human engineers could fix the ethereal climate system in a matter of hours. The problem was caused by a simple feedback loop that required a specific type of intervention. But the ethereals had never been told about the feedback issue because they had always dismissed human technical briefings as unnecessary details. As winter deepened on the ethereal homeworld, the death toll continued to rise. Ethereal leaders made increasingly desperate attempts to restart their climate systems, but every intervention made the situation worse. They were trying to fix advanced technology with primitive understanding, like children playing with nuclear reactors. Dr. Angela Turner, formerly humanity's chief medical officer for alien relations, watched news reports of the ethereal crisis from her office on Earth. She had spent years working with ethereal physicians, helping them understand human medical techniques that could be adapted for their biology. Now she was watching them die from problems that simple human intervention could solve. The crisis deepened when 3 separate worlds experienced simultaneous failures of their primary life support systems. A Zeltharian mining colony lost atmospheric pressure when their air recycling system collapsed. A Corvin research station suffered total power failure when their fusion reactor went critical. A Nexari passenger liner was stranded in space when their environmental systems shut down completely. In each case, The alien technicians had tried to fix the problems using their limited understanding of human technology. Their repair attempts had only accelerated the failures, turning manageable problems into life-threatening disasters. Hundreds of aliens died in situations that human engineers could have prevented with routine maintenance. President Carter received detailed briefings about each alien crisis from his intelligence teams. The reports painted a clear picture of technological collapse spreading throughout the galaxy. Every major alien civilization was experiencing critical failures of systems they had taken for granted for decades. The president's advisors debated whether humanity had a moral obligation to offer assistance. Dr. Turner argued that they could not simply watch aliens die from preventable disasters. But other officials pointed out that the aliens had brought these problems on themselves. Through decades of arrogance and discrimination. As the alien crisis worsened, some governments began sending desperate messages to Earth. These communications were carefully worded to avoid admitting complete technological dependence, but the underlying panic was obvious. The Nexari offered substantial payments for human technical consulting. The Corvins suggested limited partnerships to address specific engineering challenges. All of these offers were politely declined by Earth's diplomatic corps. President Carter had made it clear that humanity's withdrawal from galactic society was complete and permanent. The aliens would have to solve their own problems, just as they had always claimed they could. But privately, human leaders were already planning for the inevitable moment when alien pride would finally break completely. The galaxy was learning a harsh lesson about the true value of human expertise, and that lesson was written in the blood of those who had thought they could survive without human help. 18 months after humanity's withdrawal, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session in what remained of their grand chamber on Nexus Prime. Half the lighting systems had failed weeks ago, and the elegant floating platforms now operated on backup power that flickered constantly. The 7 major species gathered not in celebration, but in desperation, facing the complete collapse of their technological civilization. The Zeltharian Empire had lost 3 entire colony worlds to atmospheric failures. Their mining operations had ground to a halt as equipment broke down faster than their technicians could attempt repairs. The Empire's military fleet was grounded because their navigation systems had become unreliable, with ships getting lost in hyperspace or arriving at completely wrong destinations. Chancellor Victoria Stone received her first formal communication from an alien government since humanity's departure. The message came through encrypted channels from the Nexari leadership, marked with the highest priority codes. The text was carefully diplomatic, but Victoria could read the panic between the lines. The Nexari were begging for human technical assistance to prevent the total collapse of their interstellar communication network. Without this network, their far-flung colonies would be completely isolated from each other and from the homeworld. The message offered substantial compensation and promised favorable trade agreements in exchange for even limited human help. Victoria forwarded the message to President Carter with a recommendation that it be politely declined. Earth's position was clear and unchanging. Humanity had withdrawn from galactic affairs permanently, and no amount of alien desperation would change that decision. On Nexus Prime, the Emergency Council session was unlike anything in galactic history. The ethereal collective's representative, the same being who had spoken of human gratitude 18 months earlier, now stood before her colleagues advocating for immediate reconciliation with humanity. Her translucent form shimmered with obvious stress as she described the ongoing climate disaster on her homeworld. Thousands of ethereals had died during the harsh winter, and now the broken climate system was swinging toward deadly heat as their planet's summer approached. Ethereal engineers had made the temperature swings worse with each attempted repair. Their capital city was becoming uninhabitable, and evacuation plans were being drawn up for the first time in their species' history. The Corvan representative was in an even worse position. His people's atmospheric processors had failed completely on their homeworld, forcing the evacuation of underground cities that had housed millions for centuries. Corvan refugees were crowding into orbital stations that were never designed to support such large populations. Food and water were running short, and social order was beginning to break down. General Tony Adams monitored these alien communications from Earth's defense headquarters. His intelligence teams reported multiple alien reconnaissance missions, attempting to penetrate human space. These were not invasion forces, but desperate intelligence-gathering operations trying to understand how humans had developed such superior technology. The alien ships were easy to detect because their stealth systems had been designed with human assistance years earlier. Human engineers had built deliberate weaknesses into the technology that aliens had never discovered. Now those same weaknesses made alien vessels completely visible to human sensors. Captain Lara Swift intercepted several alien vessels attempting to salvage human technology from abandoned facilities in the neutral zone. Her patrol ships found Saltharian teams desperately trying to remove fusion reactors from former human bases. The aliens were hoping to reverse engineer human power systems to solve their energy crisis. Laura's orders were clear. Any alien ships found scavenging human technology were to be warned once and then disabled if they did not withdraw immediately. The aliens always fled after the first warning, but Lara could see the desperation in their retreat patterns. They were running out of options and time. The situation reached a breaking point when a Corvan fleet, facing complete life support failure, attempted to force land on Kepler Station. The former human colony world had been abandoned for over a year, but its automated systems were still maintaining a breathable atmosphere and stable climate. The Corvan ships were massive passenger vessels carrying thousands of refugees from their dying homeworld. Their life support systems were failing rapidly, and their navigation computers could barely calculate landing trajectories. The fleet commander sent desperate messages explaining that his people would die within hours if they could not reach the planet's surface. But the Corvan landing systems required human-designed guidance computers that no longer functioned properly. The aliens had never learned how to operate the landing systems manually, assuming that automated systems would always work perfectly. When the first ship attempted to land, it crashed into the planet's surface at full speed, killing everyone aboard. Two more ships suffered similar fates as Corvan pilots tried desperately to land without proper guidance systems. The fourth ship managed a controlled crash that left most passengers alive but badly injured. The surviving Corvans found themselves stranded on a planet with abundant resources, but no way to access them without human technology. Dr. Paul Reynolds, Earth's new xenological ethics advisor, argued in closed emergency sessions that humanity had a moral obligation to help the dying aliens. He pointed out that the Corvan refugees included thousands of children who bore no responsibility for their government's past arrogance and discrimination. President Carter remained unmoved by alien suffering. He reminded his cabinet of the decades of humiliation that humans had endured in galactic society. The aliens had made it clear that they considered humans to be inferior beings suitable only for support roles. Now they were learning the true cost of that attitude. The president's intelligence briefings painted a stark picture of galactic collapse. The Nexari had lost contact with half their colonies due to communication failures. The ethereal collective was abandoning their homeworld as climate systems became completely uncontrollable. The Saltharian Empire was fragmenting as individual worlds lost the ability to coordinate with their central government. Smaller alien species were suffering even worse fates. 3 minor civilizations had already gone extinct as their life support systems failed completely. Others were reverting to primitive technology. abandoning their cities and returning to subsistence, agriculture that their ancestors had practiced centuries earlier. Through all of this chaos, Earth remained peaceful and prosperous. Human technology continued to function perfectly because humans understood how to maintain and repair the systems they had built. Human colonies expanded steadily into territories that aliens had abandoned, claiming resources that desperate alien governments could no longer access. The galaxy that had dismissed human capabilities was learning a lesson written in blood and suffering. But pride and bureaucracy still prevented most alien governments from admitting their complete dependence on human expertise. They continued to search for solutions that did not require acknowledging their own technological inadequacy. As the crisis deepened, Chancellor Stone began receiving multiple alien communications each day. Each message was more desperate than the last, offering greater concessions and more valuable trade deals in exchange for any form of human assistance. The aliens were slowly realizing that their survival depended entirely on human mercy. 2 years had passed since Ambassador Jake Morrison walked out of the Galactic Council chambers, and the galaxy had become a very different place. The proud civilizations that had once dismissed human capabilities now struggled to maintain basic life support systems. 3 minor species had vanished completely when their worlds became uninhabitable. The major powers survived only by rationing resources and abandoning most of their advanced technology. The Galactic Council still met, but their grand chamber on Nexus Prime had been abandoned months ago when the power grid failed permanently. Now the surviving representatives gathered in a converted warehouse on the planet's surface, using portable generators to power basic lighting and communication systems. The elegant floating platforms had been replaced by simple metal chairs arranged around a battered conference table. Ambassador Jake Morrison sat in his office on Earth, reading through a stack of formal documents that had arrived through diplomatic channels. Each document bore the official seal of a major galactic power, and each one contained language that would have been unthinkable just 2 years earlier. The proud aliens who had once lectured humans about gratitude were now formally surrendering their technological independence. The Zeltharian Empire's document was particularly detailed. It acknowledged that Zeltharian civilization depended entirely on human technology for survival. The Empire formally requested permission to send delegations to Earth for technical assistance and offered to pay any price that humanity deemed appropriate. The same species that had stolen human mining claims was now begging for human help to prevent the complete collapse of their society. Director Kevin Walsh, head of Earth's newly formed Galactic Affairs Department, coordinated humanity's response to the alien crisis. His department had been created specifically to handle the flood of desperate communications coming from dying alien worlds. Every day brought new requests for assistance, each one more humble and desperate than the last. The terms that Kevin's department offered were non-negotiable. Any alien government requesting human assistance would first acknowledge human technological superiority in writing. They would pay full reparations for decades of discrimination against human personnel. They would grant humans permanent oversight authority for any technology provided. And they would guarantee respectful treatment of human engineers and technicians. In all future interactions, these terms were complete reversals of the arrogant attitudes that aliens had shown toward humanity for decades. But with their civilizations collapsing around them, alien governments had no choice but to accept whatever conditions humans imposed. Dr. Amanda Foster, now Earth's chief science administrator, led the first human relief mission to the ethereal homeworld. Her team of engineers arrived to find a planet in complete environmental chaos. The climate control system was producing random weather patterns that swung from deadly heat to freezing cold within hours. Most of the ethereal population had fled to orbital stations, leaving their capital city nearly empty. Amanda's team worked efficiently to restore the climate systems. but only after the ethereal government signed a new treaty acknowledging human expertise. The document included formal apologies for past treatment of human personnel and guaranteed that human engineers would be treated with the respect due to technological masters. The repair work itself took less than a week. Human engineers simply bypassed the feedback loops that ethereal technicians had accidentally created and restored the original programming that had maintained perfect climate for over a century. The ethereals watched in amazement as their world's weather returned to normal for the first time in 2 years. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as human relief teams responded to alien disasters. On the Corvin homeworld, human technicians restarted atmospheric processors that had been offline for months. The repairs required knowledge that no alien possessed, involving complex startup sequences and safety protocols that had never been written down anywhere. The Nixari received human assistance in rebuilding their deep space sensor network, but only after their government formally apologized for decades of discriminatory policies. Human engineers restored the calibration protocols that Nixari technicians had never understood, making space travel safe again for the first time in over a year. Each relief mission reinforced the same message. Alien civilizations had been completely dependent on human expertise for decades without ever realizing it. The technology they had taken for granted required constant human oversight to function properly. Without human maintenance and guidance, even the most advanced alien societies quickly reverted to primitive conditions. President Carter announced humanity's conditional return to galactic affairs in a speech broadcast throughout human space and transmitted to alien governments. The president spoke not with anger or vengeance, but with quiet authority that left no room for misunderstanding. Humanity would rejoin galactic society, but only under terms that guaranteed equality and respect. The new galactic order placed humans in their rightful position as the technological leaders of known civilization. Alien governments acknowledged that their survival depended on human expertise and agreed to permanent human oversight of critical infrastructure. The species that had once dismissed humans as emotional and unstable now competed to attract human engineers and scientists to their worlds. The reformed Galactic Council met for the first time in a new chamber designed and built by human engineers. The seating arrangement placed all species on equal levels, with no platform higher than any other. The ethereal representative, who had once lectured humans about gratitude, now served as the official liaison, tasked with ensuring that human personnel received proper respect and support. Admiral Lisa Hughes, promoted from her position as captain, served as Earth's primary representative to the new council. She delivered humanity's opening statement with calm dignity, establishing the principles that would govern future galactic cooperation. Respect for human capabilities, acknowledgement of human contributions, and equality in all diplomatic interactions were non-negotiable requirements. The alien representatives listened without interruption, taking careful notes and asking respectful questions when appropriate. The same beings who had once laughed at human concerns now hung on every word spoken by human officials. They had learned through bitter experience that human expertise was not a luxury, but a necessity for survival. In his final act as Earth's President, Nick Carter addressed both humanity and the galaxy about the lessons learned from the past 2 years. He spoke about the importance of recognizing and respecting the contributions of all species, regardless of their age or perceived status. He reminded everyone that arrogance and discrimination ultimately harm those who practice them more than those who suffer from them. The galaxy had paid a terrible price for underestimating human capabilities. Millions had died from preventable disasters caused by technological failures that humans could have prevented with routine maintenance. Entire civilizations had collapsed because they had taken human expertise for granted and never bothered to understand the systems that kept them alive. But from this tragedy had emerged a new understanding of humanity's true place in galactic civilization. Humans were not junior partners or grateful recipients of alien wisdom. They were the technological foundation upon which galactic society was built. Without human knowledge and human skills, the grand civilizations of the galaxy were nothing more than primitives playing with tools they could not understand. The reformed galactic government established new protocols ensuring that human contributions would never again be overlooked or dismissed. Human engineers received positions of authority on every major project. Human scientists led research initiatives that had previously excluded them. Human diplomats participated as equals in all important decisions affecting galactic policy. Aliens had finally learned their lesson, though the cost had been higher than anyone could have imagined. They would never again make the mistake of dismissing human capabilities or taking human cooperation for granted. The galaxy belonged to all its species, but it could not survive without human expertise to keep it running.